There's a lot of people in the national media who I've been hearing recently say that the New York Jets are overrated, but yet they look at the New Orleans Saints and say that this team not only is a lock to win the NFC South, but they potentially are a dark horse Super Bowl contender. And you guys already know I'm not big on the New Orleans Saints. And people keep gassing up Derek Carr. Like, Derek Carr is a really good QB. But is he really a good enough QB where he just tremendously elevates your whole entire team, your whole entire organization? Like, there are people hyping up Derek Carr like he's the second coming of Drew Brees. There's a reason why the Las Vegas Raiders let him go. There's a reason why he's in New Orleans. He never wanted to leave Las Vegas. He loved the Raiders. He loved that fan base. So there's a reason why he needed a fresh start. And yes, you do have a really talented team. And Derek Carr should play at a really high level, but he's not going to give you elite level QB play like a Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or Josh Allen. He's a quarterback that needs everything to go right. And in big moments in big games, he oftentimes doesn't really have good performances and he's highly inconsistent. And the New Orleans Saints have a really shaky offensive line situation. They're solid at offensive tackle, but offensive guard is a little bit of a concern. And even the offensive tackle is a concern because you got Trevor Penning, who's coming off an injury, and he was drafted really high. We don't even know if he's really good because coming out, he was more seen as a developmental player. So we don't know what the Saints are going to be getting at left tackle this year, and their offensive line could be a little bit shaky this year. And Derek Carr, he does have a pretty good group of wide receivers, but my biggest pet peeve with the Saints, and what a lot of people in the media are overlooking about this squad, is the fact that Derek Carr is a solid QB, but this is still an overall not really good coaching staff. I mean, Dennis Allen is a really good defensive-minded coach, but he's not a good head coach. He's really conservative. He doesn't really have good clock management skills. And he mismanaged the New Orleans Saints quarterback situation last year. And you got to remember that there was a good amount of Saints fans who wanted Dennis Allen fired. Dennis Allen, at one point, had what was it? It's one of those little survey things. I think he had one of those GoFundMes or one of those petitions. Yeah, it was a petition made to get Dennis Allen fired. Literally, you can look it up. Look up Fire Dennis Allen petition. And there's literally a petition up there with a good amount of signatures with Dennis Allen wanting him to be fired. And when you look at his coaching record, he hasn't had anything impressive. As a matter of fact, it's been really discouraging. And the New Orleans Saints, you got to remember, prior to Dennis Allen becoming their head coach, they won 9 games in Sean Payton's final season with pretty much scrap pieces on offense. Their best receiver that year was Marquez Callaway, and they had 4 different QBs. And they nearly made it to the playoffs. That was Sean Payton's final season. And Dennis Allen gets that team the following year that's actually better. And then he has a couple of injuries, but then they end up not even having a winning record. If Sean Payton was the head coach of the Saints last year, that would have been a playoff team. I think we can all agree with that. And you look at the fact that people keep overlooking that the Carolina Panthers, although they do got a rookie quarterback, they got Frank Wright. At this moment, Frank Wright is the best head coach in the NFC South. He's the most experienced, and not only that, but he's the most successful. He's the only head coach in that division to have been in a playoff game. Frank Wright shouldn't be overlooked. And the Carolina Panthers shouldn't be overlooked. The Carolina Panthers have a really solid roster. You look at the New Orleans Saints, yeah, their roster is pretty good, but their coaching is probably one of the worst in the NFL going into this year. Honestly, that's the biggest concern about this team. You ask Saints fans what's their biggest concern about this team. Honestly, the most logical ones are going to tell you the coaching. You're just hoping and you're just optimistic because you like what you see on paper. But you got to remember that the Dallas Cowboys, and a lot of those years when they were going 8-8 with Jason Garrett as their head coach, they had a lot of talented squads that year also. Or those years also, excuse me. And you look at the fact that the New Orleans Saints going into this year, yeah, they do have a really solid roster on paper. The coaching is severely lacking. And you know, the Denver Broncos last season, there were people out there around this time last year who said that they were going to win the AFC and dethrone Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And you saw how that went with Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson. It got really ugly. Really ugly. And you look at this Dennis Allen situation, you look at the fact that he hasn't had a winning record in all his years being a head coach, and you look at the fact that he isn't really somebody that you're looking at right now with a lot of confidence in. He's kind of looking at Derek Carr as the savior for everything. Kind of honestly. And Derek Carr, like I said earlier, is a good quarterback, but he's not one of those QBs that functions well with instability. He's not one of those QBs that's going to be great with a, questionable offensive line. And he's not really going to be somebody that's going to thrive in big time games and big moments. You seen what this guy did against the Pittsburgh Steelers late last season. He's really inconsistent. And he hasn't really had any standout performances. And what I'm about to say next is going to be really, really harsh. But I believe that this is the truth about Derek Carr. Let's be honest, man. Derek Carr hasn't been the same since he had that back injury. Let's keep it 100. Be honest. Derek Carr, before he had that injury, was at a MVP level. And it's really unfortunate that that happened to him. And ever since then, he hasn't been the same quarterback. He's still a solid QB. But when you look at Derek Carr and these big games with the game on the line and big moments, he doesn't come through. Another example is the playoff game against the Cincinnati Bengals from a couple of years ago. They had the opportunity to win the game with your franchise QB on the field and Derek Carr, and they weren't able to come through. And Derek Carr wasn't able to deliver, and he didn't really play all that great in that game, honestly. So Derek Carr, I think he's a solid QB, but I don't think he's going to be a QB that can thrive if he doesn't really have a great coaching staff. And there are questions about Pete Carmichael. So people have concerns about Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael. The New Orleans Saints are overrated. I don't get how people can honestly look at this team with the questions that they have on their coaching staff, with Dennis Allen having a losing record as a head coach. You got questions with Pete Carmichael. Your offensive line is shaky. Derek Carr he's okay, but he can't overcome bad coaching. The Carolina Panthers are being slept on with Frank Wright. Frank Wright is the best head coach in the NFC South. He's the only head coach in that division that has a taste of making it to the postseason. He's the only head coach in the NFC South right now that has had a taste of success, and a lot of people are falling in love with what the New Orleans Saints look like on paper. But a big reason why teams that look great on paper don't work out, like the Denver Broncos last season, is because they have bad coaching. The New Orleans Saints have bad coaching. The Broncos last season had bad coaching. The Dallas Cowboys, all those years, they went 8-8 with Jason Garrett at the helm at head coach. They had really good teams those seasons. They were held back by Jason Garrett being a mediocre head coach. Dennis Allen is a mediocre head coach. The New Orleans Saints are not going to win this division, and I doubt they make it to I doubt New Orleans even has a winning record. I don't even think they're going to be a playoff team this year. I think the most games the Saints are going to win this year are 9. And even if they do get the 9 wins, I don't even know if they even go far in the postseason, honestly. So I'm not really high on the New Orleans Saints. I think this team is severely overrated. But you guys let me know down in the comment section down below. Am I being a little bit too harsh on Dennis Allen? Is the coaching going to prove me wrong?